In this lesson, we are going to look at the 3 types of prompts that appear on the DET. These 3 types of prompts are used across all of the extended writing and speaking questions that we looked at in a previous lesson. So if you get good at responding to these 3 prompt types, then you will be well prepared for all of the extended writing and speaking questions that you will see on the test. The 3 types of prompts are: 1. Describe. These types of prompts ask you to give information and details about some topic. So really to share your knowledge about some topic. The second type is recount. And this means to tell a story from your past. So to recount a story means to tell a story. So in this prompt type, you're simply asked to tell a story from your past. And finally, we have argue. In these prompts, you will be asked to state your opinion and justify it, meaning explain why you believe what you believe. So there's just 3 prompt types. They are relatively straightforward and easy to remember, but let's go through some more details and examples and strategies for each one so that you know how to approach them. So here are some examples of describe prompts. What are some things your parents do for you? How do you thank them for these things? What is something important that you have learned from a parent? So this prompt is asking you to describe your parents and your relationship with your parents, and generally just talk about the topic of you and your parents. Second, name a famous person you would like to have dinner with. What 2 questions would you ask them? What would you hope to learn? Again, you can see you're just being asked to talk about a famous person and what you would like to learn from them. Third, describe a day in the life of one of your family members. And here, you're just being asked to think of a family member and describe what they do in a day. That's it. Let's look at examples of recount prompts. Describe a time you learned how to do something new. What did you learn? How did you learn it? You'll notice here that this prompt has describe in it. However, this isn't a describe prompt. This is a recount prompt because you are being asked to tell a story from your past. In this case, you're being asked to tell a story about how you learned something new. 2. Describe a time when you had to work very hard to achieve a goal. What did you learn from the experience? Again, this prompt has describe in it, but it's not a describe prompt. So typically on the DET, a recount prompt will have describe a time. Not always, but if you see describe a time, that means it's a recount prompt. And in this recount prompt, you are being asked to tell a story from your past about how you had to work very hard to achieve a goal, and then what you learned from the experience. In both of these examples, you can see how typically in a recount prompt, you are asked to not only describe the experience, but also to describe what you learned from the experience, how the experience changed you. Third, describe a time when you surprised a friend or family member. How did the person react to your surprise? How did it impact your relationship with that person? In this prompt, you're not being asked to talk about the lessons that you learned, but you are being asked to talk about how surprising this friend or family member impacted your relationship with that person. So in general, with recount prompts, you are asked to talk about the outcomes of the experience, so how it changed you or changed your relationship with somebody or something of that nature. And finally, let's look at some examples of argue prompts. Do you think it's important for a person to have friends who share the same language and culture? Why or why not? A strong sign that you have an argue prompt is if the question why is in it. So if you are asked why or why not or why or provide reasons, those are all strong clues that you have an argue prompt in which you're being asked to state your opinion and justify it. Next, you should never judge a person by the way they look. Do you agree or disagree? Why? Give specific reasons for your opinion. So in this second prompt, we have why and we have give specific reasons for your opinion. We also have do you agree or disagree, which is another strong clue that you have an argue prompt. And 3, how much time using technology do you think is too much time? Provide reasons to support your answer. So what all of these examples have in common and what makes them an argue prompt fundamentally is that you are being asked for your opinion. What do you believe? And then you are asked to justify that opinion. So to explain why you hold that opinion. So let's compare these 3 prompts and see some of the key differences. So generally speaking, describe and recount prompts are easier. Recount prompts are easy because it's easy to tell a story from our past. In order to tell a good story, all you need to do is start at the beginning, move to the middle, and then finish at the end. In other words, you just need to move in chronological order, in the order of time. If you do that, your response will be well structured. You will tell a good story. So for recount prompts, you don't really have to learn any new strategies. You just have to remember to follow the order of events in chronological order in your response. Describe prompts are easy because you are just sharing information. So in describe prompts, you don't have to think very much about how the ideas fit together and the order of ideas and things like that, because you're just being asked to share information about a topic. But in argue prompts, you do have to think about the structure of your arguments and how they fit together and the order of them, and that makes them more difficult. So for describe and recount prompts, here are the things to remember. 1, respond to all parts of the prompt. So read the prompt well, make sure you understand the prompt, and make sure in your response that you address each part of the prompt. Otherwise, you'll have maybe what would be considered an incomplete answer, and you will lose points for not fully addressing the prompt. 2, stay on topic. So make sure that as you read the prompt, you understand what Duolingo really wants you to talk about. So what kind of experience they want you to describe from your past, or what topic they want you to share information about, and you stay focused on that topic. If you stray from that topic and talk about things that are unrelated to the prompt, you will end up losing points. You should also get in the habit of talking about one idea at a time. So many students, for recount and describe prompts as well as argue prompts, they will jump between ideas. So they'll start talking about one idea and then they'll jump to another idea, and then they'll come back to the first idea, and they are moving like this between ideas, and it makes it very confusing. Just think when you talk to somebody and they're jumping from all of these different things and back, it's confusing to understand what they're saying. You want to tell them, okay, can you slow down and just talk about each thing in order? So you want to do the same thing in your responses. Talk about one idea at a time. So talk fully about one idea, then move to the next idea, then move to another idea, and don't jump back. And like I said before, argue prompts are more difficult than describe and recount because you have to construct an argument that has your main thesis and your supporting ideas with evidence and examples and all of that. So there's a lot more structure in a response to an argue prompt than you have to include in your responses to recount and describe prompts. So let me walk through a full example of a describe prompt and then a recount prompt. So we'll start with the describe prompt. Name a famous person you would like to have dinner with. What 2 questions would you ask them? What would you hope to learn? A famous person that I would like to have dinner with is Toto Wolff. He is the head of the Mercedes F1 team. I would like to talk with him because I would like to learn more about what it takes to be an effective leader. My first question would be, what do you look for when hiring people? I think that in order to be a successful leader, you have to be able to build incredible teams of people. That starts by finding the right people to bring onto your team. With this question, I would hope to learn more about how Toto does that so well. My second question would be, how do you motivate people? Another crucial aspect of effective leadership is being able to get the best out of your team. A great leader must be able to compel people to work hard and do their very best. With this question, I would like to learn how Toto does this, especially because he seems like a genuinely kind person. It is hard to imagine him being a strict manager that intimidates his employees. So this response is strong because it does all of those things that we looked at before. So 1, it stays on topic. The entire response is directly related to the prompt. The second thing I do is I talk about one idea at a time. This is easy to do when you have well-structured paragraphs, which we talked about in a previous lesson. So each paragraph here has a different central idea, and all of the ideas within a paragraph are all around that central idea, which means that I'm only talking about one idea at a time. I'm not jumping around. So if you have strong paragraphs, then you will only be talking about one idea at a time, and you will have a well-structured response. Let's look at an example of a recount response. Describe a time you learned how to do something new. What did you learn? How did you learn it? When I was a teenager, I learned French. This process took many years and a lot of hard work. First, I enrolled in French courses at my high school. I started at the beginner level. In order to speed up my progress, I asked my teacher for additional study materials. I also enrolled in summer intensive French courses where I had multiple hours of lessons per day. When I got to university, I continued taking French courses. At my university, there were also language tables where you could go to practice a language while you ate lunch. I went to the French language table most days. In my 3rd year at university, I studied abroad in Cameroon. It was an immersive language study program. I lived in a homestay where we spoke only French. I took classes at a French language university and did a research internship that was entirely in French. In short, my entire life was in French, which enabled me to improve a lot and become very comfortable in French. Although often challenging, this experience was ultimately rewarding. I now enjoy watching French language shows and movies, and I'm able to travel to countries like France for vacation. What makes this response a strong recount response is that I tell a good story. So I start at the very beginning of my journey learning French in high school. I talk about when I was in university. I talk about my study abroad experience. And then even though I'm not asked about it, I finish my response by talking about how learning French has changed my life, how it has benefited me, which is always a nice way to end a recount response, even if you are not asked for that explicitly in the prompt. So even in a recount response, it's important that you talk about one idea at a time, which I did here by having well-structured paragraphs. So even in recount prompts, you want to have strong paragraphs. You can see that each of my paragraphs is about a different topic or a different idea. So first, I said that I started learning French as a teenager and that the entire process was difficult. My second paragraph is about my high school experience studying French. My third paragraph is about studying French in university. My fourth paragraph is about my study abroad experience learning French. So by using paragraphs like that, I talk about one idea at a time. There's a nice logical flow and progression to my response, and that's why it will get so many points. Let's now move on to argue prompts, which, like I said before, are more difficult. So the mindset that you need to get into in order to do well on argue prompts is that you need to pretend like you are a lawyer in a court. So this is a lawyer or a barrister or attorney. And what does a lawyer do? Well, as a lawyer, it is your job to argue whether your client is guilty or innocent. That's it. That's what you are paid to do. You have to convince the judge or the jury of your position by providing supporting ideas. So, for example, if your client is accused of stealing something, it's your job to convince the judge or the jury why your client did not steal something. So you could say, my client was not in the country when the item was stolen. Or my client has no history of committing crimes and therefore is very unlikely to have stolen something. Or my client is very rich and so they have no reason to steal anything. These are all reasons why your client did not steal something that you are trying to convince the judge and jury of so that they find your client innocent. And so that the judge or jury believes your supporting ideas, you have to provide evidence. So if you say, my client was not in the country the day that that item was stolen, you would need to show, here are plane tickets or Instagram posts showing pictures of this person in another country on these specific days. You have to provide evidence for your claims. So that's exactly what you need to do in argue prompts. You have to have a clear position or opinion. You need to provide supporting ideas for why you believe that, and then you have to provide evidence for those supporting ideas. So here is the strategy for argue prompts. While you are planning, so in that initial planning phase that you have to read the prompt and plan your response, this is what you want to do. Identify the main idea of the prompt. So make sure you really understand what Duolingo wants you to have an opinion about. Then answer the question that you are asked or state your opinion clearly. So make sure you know your opinion clearly. I see many students who they're not sure and they start responding, and that ends up creating a really confusing response because sometimes they're arguing one side of an opinion and then sometimes they're arguing the other side of an opinion. So as a reader, you don't know what's going on. So it's important that you clearly identify and state your opinion. So even if you don't believe that opinion 100%, it's much better to just pick that opinion and stand by that opinion in your response. This isn't a test of what you actually believe. It's just a test of your English. So don't worry if that opinion in your response isn't exactly what you believe. Then, once you have your opinion, you need to think of 2 or ideally 3 supporting ideas that explain why you hold that opinion. And while you are answering, you are going to think of the examples or the other ideas in your paragraph. So I wouldn't recommend trying to think of your opinion and your supporting ideas and your evidence or examples all in the beginning planning phase because you likely won't have enough time. But with practice, you will have enough time to think of your opinion and think of your supporting ideas. And then while you are responding, you can think of your evidence, which is typically examples. I'm going to explain that next, that will justify that supporting idea. So that's how I would recommend approaching argue prompts. Let's go through some examples together so you can see this strategy in action. So this prompt is, education is important, so everyone should go to university after high school. Do you agree or disagree with this statement? Provide reasons for your response. 1, let's identify the main idea of the prompt. It is going to university after school, after high school in particular. 2, answer the question or state your viewpoint directly. So in the prompt you are asked, do you agree or disagree with this statement? I would say, I disagree that everyone should go to university after high school. It's perfectly fine to reuse the language of the prompt when you are stating your opinion. That way, it's absolutely clear to the grader what you believe. Once we state our opinion clearly, we now need to explain why we believe that, with 2 or 3 supporting ideas. My first supporting idea would be, some people want to pursue other interests that don't require university degrees. Next, some people don't know what they want to study. And 3, some people are too stressed after high school. As you are coming up with your supporting ideas, you may already have examples or evidence in mind, and that's fine. But it's important that during the planning phase, you really focus on getting those supporting ideas. So you don't want to spend too much time thinking about one idea and the evidence and examples you're going to use for it. I think it's better, again, to focus on getting all 2 or 3 of those supporting ideas. That way you have the outline or plan for your response. So now that I have this, I have the hard work done for my response. I have done the hard work of thinking about the main ideas of my response, and now I need to just fill in the details. So let me show you what that would look like. I would start like this. I disagree that everyone should go to university after high school. I would always recommend starting a argue response by stating your opinion clearly like this. Some students put this at the end, and that is not as strong as putting this at the beginning. Why? Is because it makes it so much easier to read the rest of your response. Once I know what your opinion is, then it's much easier to understand why you are writing all the other parts of your response. I understand how the other parts of your response all fit together. If you put your opinion at the end, then I have to kind of guess and work as I'm reading your response about how the ideas fit together. So, in other words, putting your opinion at the beginning is an easy way to improve the cohesion and discourse coherence of your response. My first paragraph would be this. Firstly, some people want to pursue careers that don't require university degrees. For example, elite athletes likely don't require a university degree in order to excel in their sport. Instead, they should spend time training, not studying. My second paragraph. Secondly, some people don't know what they want to study. This was the case for my brother. When he went to university, he didn't know what he wanted to become or even what he was interested in studying. He ended up studying finance because that is what his best friend did. However, now he does not like working as a banker. If he had done an internship or perhaps several before going to university, he could have discovered what he liked and been sure to study something that would have enabled him to get a job he enjoyed. Third, finally, I believe that many young people are too stressed and they should take time off before going to university. University life can be quite intense, and if a young person is not ready for it, it can be very difficult. I think that many people would benefit from taking a gap year after high school so that they can relax and recharge before resuming their studies. And finally, if you have the time, you can include a concluding paragraph. However, it is not essential. I don't know why, but so many students think that they need to have a concluding paragraph in order to have a strong response. You don't. When I took the DET, I did not have concluding paragraphs in my responses, and I still got a perfect score. But here I had the time, so I included it. In conclusion, for the reasons outlined above, I do not believe that everyone should go to university after high school. So this argue response is so strong because I state my opinion clearly. So from the very beginning, the grader knows what I believe. Then I have 3 paragraphs that all have a clear central supporting idea. And in that paragraph, I provide evidence, which in this case are examples that demonstrate and help the grader see why I believe that. So that's what you want to do for argue prompts. State your opinion, provide your supporting ideas, and provide your evidence for each supporting idea. If you do that well, you will have a very high scoring response. As you are preparing for writing and speaking questions on the DET, it's important to know that Duolingo likes to ask about the same topics over and over. So because Duolingo is a test that anybody can take anywhere in the world, they have to be sure to only ask things that anybody could respond to. So if they ask something that only makes sense to somebody in a particular country or region, that would be unfair to everybody else in the world. So the topics are very general. At Arno, we have analyzed thousands of questions from the DET and the official practice test, and we've identified the topics that Duolingo asks about. And they are the arts, so music, literature, theater, movies, etc., culture and religion, education, the environment, food, friends and family, health and wellness, hobbies, money, personal beliefs, personal development, places, society, sports, technology, and travel. When you are practicing in Arno, you will see that writing and speaking questions will have these topic labels so that you can be sure to practice questions that are in each of the topics. By doing that, you become comfortable writing about those topics, and you'll be able to reuse those ideas on the test. The other thing we've done is we have added thousands of words to our vocabulary builder that are also categorized by topic. So if you find that technology prompts, for example, are difficult for you, you can go into our vocabulary builder and you can study the hand-picked words that we believe are most useful for technology. And if you learn those words, then you will find it much easier to write about technology.